So if you ask about any Elder Scrolls fan, what do you think is the best part of the Elder Scrolls? And you'll probably get a very mixed response from people. Some people might say the music. Some people might say the characters. Some people might say the weapons, the armor, the story. Well, for me, it's a whole mixture of things. Yeah, a lot of that goes into that, obviously. But I think one of the key things that often gets lost is just the overall, as I said earlier, characters. I really do think like having a good cast of characters really does help the Elder Scrolls games. I mean, you cannot tell me that when you played Oblivion, you weren't interested in finding out more about the notorious Grey Fox. Or how about in Skyrim, it was so interesting to find out the leader of the Greybeards was a dragon. Just having a cool cast of characters, I think, helps the story actually become better. And today, let's talk about, in my opinion, the 5 best characters in the Elder Scrolls. Now, keep in mind, I'm still getting over that cold I had last week. But keep in mind, this list, it's going to exclude the player characters. So you won't see the Dragonborn or the Hero of Kvatch or the Nerevarine or the Eternal Champion or Silas the Red Guard or the Vestige from Easy ESO. We won't see any of that. Because in my opinion, the player character, if I was to do that, it would be basically, we already knew who the top 5 would be, and it'd be kind of annoying. And you know what I mean? Just imagine a list about the top 5 best characters in the Elder Scrolls, and literally it's just all the main characters. All the player characters. Wouldn't that be kind of lame? It would not. It would definitely make you question, so he's just basically ranking the heroes, which that's for another day. Yes, I'm not gonna, by the way, when I do eventually get to that video on ranking the Elder Scrolls protagonist, I'm not going to, how should I put this? It won't really be by strength. It'll just be by their deeds and basically the stuff that they had to stop. Because I get that the Eternal Champion is nowhere near the most powerful hero. In fact, I don't get why he's so underrated compared to the Hero of Kvatch, because the Eternal Champion effectively did kind of the same thing, but as the Hero of Kvatch. But I'll say this. He did basically stop Yegar Tharn's plot from basically kind of ruining the world itself. Because keep in mind, Yegar Tharn was no person that was fit to be emperor. He was not an emperor. So him just kind of being there and messing shit up really could have made a really interesting Tamriel had he not been stopped. And I don't really want to say interesting that it's so inviting. And, but I'll also say this, the Hero of Kvatch, yes, while I don't think he's as powerful as the Nerevarine or the Dragonborn, think about this. The Oblivion Crisis has affected all of Tamriel, not just Cyrodiil. What did the Nerevarine really stop? Okay, an invasion from, Dagothar's revenge, I guess, against Morrowind. And I guess it wasn't really his revenge, but I guess, yeah, sure, Dagothar's true plans, it was pretty terrifying. His true plans had no one in Morrowind ever gotten in his way. Yeah, that whole Kulikan stuff and the heart. This is the heart of the god. And how he was basically gonna, establish some sort of new religion. Yeah, he was crazy. And if you actually want to know more about Dagothar's true intentions, I recommend you go to a YouTube channel known as Avarti. He is very good at this stuff, on kind of like the villains and the lore of Elder Scrolls. There's a lot of channels I should probably link down for you guys in the description or something, because a lot of these channels, they're better at me than explaining the lore. Even though I know all of it, I'm not as, how should I put it, interested in talking about all of it all the time. But anyway, that's why the great unsung heroes that do give us Elder Scrolls lore, we have to appreciate them while they're all still around. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into this. Coming in at the number 5, I want to say, I already mentioned him earlier in the video, which is kind of funny, the Grey Fox. Or, I kind of forgot his actual name, because, You don't really spend too much time on that in the game, but I mean, he was basically the Count of Leowind. And why do I like the Gray Fox so much? Well, capital. Very simple. It's just, he was a great way to show off the Thieves Guild and the leadership. I actually like how this guy was ballsy enough to steal from a god. Like, he stole his Grey Cowl from Nocturnal herself. Doesn't get any more, like, badass thievery than that. And also, I just love how for some odd reason, he would always say the word capital. But keep in mind, the Gray Fox is not necessarily a person more than it is just a title. But I just kind of forgot his actual name, so he has to be on. I just call him the Gray Fox. And also, I really like how he sends you on missions that actually make sense to his goals. Where, like, the Thieves Guild in Skyrim, there really is no leader. I guess Mercer Frey, but, you know, you don't really get to interact with Mercer Frey that much. And that's kind of a thing in the Elder Scrolls universe with, like, guild leaders, is we don't really get to interact with them too much. But the Gray Fox, we actually did, and it was kind of nice to see that transition of, you know, like, you kind of becoming the Gray Fox and him stepping down. Like, I thought that was a nice way to show off in the Elder Scrolls. Like, because most of the time when you become the leader of new faction, it's because the other faction person died, or other faction leader died or something. Like, you become Archmage in Oblivion because Archmage Traven dies. He sacrifices himself so you can take out Minimarco. Although, I will say this, there's no actual evidence. I mean, how should I put this? There's no actual, like, way of knowing if that was the true version of Minimarco. But if so, he was killed, so it doesn't matter. I'm pretty sure it probably was. I know a lot of people dispute it, but I think it really was, because why would Bethesda make Minimarco the main antagonist and then say, well, it wasn't really him? That's kind of dumb and retarded. So I think that it's just because people, like, you know, Minimarco, he's so powerful that it's kind of unbelievable, especially since we already know how the game works. How the canon version of Elder Scrolls works is the guild quest lines aren't really actually canon to the player's story. The only things that are canon to the player's story are the DLCs and the main quest. Some things here and there can be canon. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if in Elder Scrolls 6 we hear about some sort of, like, I wouldn't be surprised in Elder Scrolls 6 if we kind of hear about, like, how the Dragonborn may have saved, like, the city of Winterhold from the Thalmor. But I don't think we'll hear that the Dragonborn was the Archmage who defeated Arcano and stopped the crisis of the Eye of Magnus. Or we may hear rumors of how, like, maybe the Dragonborn assisted the companions at one point. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think we'll hear that he became the Harbinger and all that stuff. So I don't think all that's canon. I think just if it is ever going to become canon, like if the guild quest lines ever become canon, I think we'll only have like a small bit of them be canon. Probably their most important quest. It's only because Bethesda doesn't want the player character to basically become this so OP being who's influential and then magically disappears. Because if you think about it this way, when the Dragonborn probably disappears, because I'm pretty sure he disappears. Like, you know, again, you should watch Fudge Muppet's video on what really happened to the Dragonborn, or at least kind of what we can, you know, infer from the Dragonborn DLC. Because, to be honest, the Dragonborn's one of those characters, just like the Hero of Kvatch, that it's almost impossible for, like, a lot of the in-game events, like, the events that happen in between games to happen if the Dragonborn's walking around Tamriel doing his Dragonborn-like crap. Like, you know, we already know that if the Hero of Kvatch was probably around during the Red Diamond and all that kind of stuff, and also, like, when Chancellor Okato had to hold the Empire together and before he was assassinated by the Thalmor. Again, we just all know that if the Hero of Kvatch had been around, it is possible that the Empire may have been able to hold itself together because the Hero of Kvatch would have been able to assist in anything the Empire needs. But obviously, the Hero of Kvatch became Sheogorath. So, but anyway, back to the whole original topic. We're getting sidetracked there. I just like the interaction between guild leader and kind of like the player character, because we don't get that too often. And if we do, the guild master is usually some sort of jerk who's going to betray the guild at the end. Like Astrid's a good example, but anyway, those are the reasons I like the Gray Fox. He's got a lot of badass lore behind him, I guess behind how he came to be, and I just like how in Oblivion he's just funny with the whole capital thing, and how his missions actually are like related to the agenda. He's not just sending you on random dumb quests for the sake of random dumb quests. It's actually related to the story. I actually like the story of the Thieves Guild in Oblivion. I like the story of the Thieves Guild in Skyrim. I like how it's like kind of the return to dominance kind of story. But I like just how the Thieves Guild operated, and I like how everybody respected the Gray Fox. Like, you know, nobody really respected Mercer Frey. But anyway, coming in at number 4. Now you're probably gonna see these. Everybody and their mother will probably be surprised at this, but I find the Daedric Prince of Pestilence, Peryite, to be one of the more fascinating characters in the Elder Scrolls. I know this might be weird because, you know, when people make their like top 5 characters or whatever of the Elder Scrolls, they'll have like Mehrunes Dagon or Molag Bal, or one of those kind of, like, those are the only 2 Daedra that really we've ever truly gotten to, besides Timaeus Mora from the Dragonborn DLC, and I guess sort of Sheogorath and Jyggalag, who may or may not be on this list, that we actually truly got to interact with. And so, but even then, like, we got to battle against them, so I wouldn't even say interact. We didn't really get to even interact with Mehrunes Dagon. He kind of just shows up, and he's like just standing there in the Imperial City, and you just walk right by him. So it's kind of funny that you don't even get to interact with Mehrunes Dagon. In fact, the only time I can really ever count my first interaction with actual Mehrunes Dagon was in Morrowind. But then, you know, the only time you actually really get to truly speak to him is in Skyrim for like a minute. So anyway, it's the lore, obviously, of Mehrunes Dagon that makes people love him so much. But Peryite, in my opinion, is a very interesting Daedric Prince, because I like how he's the Daedric Prince of Order. Or, not really, but, like, he maintains the natural order of things, is what I like about him. I don't know, he's got a mystery to him, too. Like, why is Peryite depicted as a dragon? Like, he's one of the weakest Daedric princes, but yet he's the one who's supposed to keep, like, the order of the natural order of things. And I like how he always is releasing new diseases to... Well, it's not really explained why Peryite is doing all that. Is it really just because Peryite's just that much of a dick? Or maybe Peryite has some sort of secret motive behind wanting to release a disease upon all of Tamriel. In fact, I really do believe that if we ever get to meet the Slode, like, in-game, I truly believe that Peryite will probably play a big story with that. Because in my opinion, the Thracian Plague is one of the greatest things in Elder Scrolls lore that I'd really like to kind of have more about. Like, how do they create it? And I really do believe that they probably have Peryite's assistance. But then again, maybe Peryite would be the one tasking us to get rid of the Slode, as they might pose a threat to the natural order in the task of all things. And I really like his voice in Skyrim. It is just so, like, I want you to go to Bethardums and kill in my name. I can't do it, obviously. I suck at voice acting. But I don't know, it's something like that. I just like that. I like that old man kind of evil old man sorcerer kind of voice that he has. It's so funny. Anyway, coming in at number 3. Now, this might be a surprise to you all, but we have Esbern. I know Esbern, Delphine catch a bad break, but I don't think this is rightfully so. And I think this is really only by players who don't really know the lore of the Elder Scrolls universe and don't really understand why Delphine is kind of a, you know, let's be honest, kind of a biatch. Like, nobody really likes Delphine. But Esbern is one of those characters that I truly find fascinating. As you have to understand that the Blades are doing only what they truly think is right. They are truly doing what they think is right. And keep in mind, if it wasn't for Delphine, the world would have ended anyways. Because as much as you want to say Delphine is stupid and blah, 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 well, before she started looking into the dragons, I didn't see anyone else doing anything. In fact, it was her assistance that gets the player character where they need to go and progresses the story, because the Greybeards are just going to have you sit and wait and figure it out yourself. Nah, it's Delphine who basically strings the player into basically in the final battle against Alduin. She's the one who sets up all that in motion. But anyway, this is not about Delphine. This is about Esbern. One thing I like about Esbern is his calm and rash personality. Not calm and rash. Calm and like, it's not. I want to say persistent on what he wants to do. Like he has this perseverance about him. Basically, I like how, unlike Delphine, he's not as brash, but he also is determined. Like, he doesn't want you to kill Paarthurnax because he's a dragon. He just thinks that it's possible Paarthurnax may return to his evil nature, and so he thinks it's best that you just get rid of him. Delphine only is just kind of like brash about it and says, no, he's a dragon. Just like all dragons, he must die. And you are the Dragonborn, so go do it, or don't talk to us again. Like, you know, Esbern's more like the kind of guy that's like, listen, I don't want Paarthurnax's death just as much as you don't, but what we need to make sure that he doesn't do, like, he was Alduin's right-hand man. There's a chance that he could always return to his evil nature, and Paarthurnax even says that himself, that, you know, he has to fight that urge every day. So, in theory, I guess it's kind of true. But also, I like how that in the time of Skyrim, the blades are no more, and that you kind of have to work with the blades to rebuild the blades. And I cannot wait to see if we hear anything from Esbern and depending on how far Elder Scrolls 6 is set in front of Skyrim. I truly believe that the game will only be like 5 years to 6, or maybe Bethesda really will do another 200-year gap, but I really hope not. See, all that shit we could have had in the game, like the War of the Red Ring, the eruption of Red Mountain. Well, I don't think that would be a good plot in the game, but a lot of the stuff we should have been able to witness in the series itself. But so hopefully they don't have another 200-year gap. But anyway, I just really like how Esbern is very calm, but yet he really strikes me kind of like a Grandmaster Joffrey. He basically represents what the Blades were in Oblivion. Delphine is kind of like, I guess, the new... She reminds me of the new Imperial Legion that we see. The ones that wear the red, red clothes and all that. Because that was the funny thing, that was never in Oblivion. We never had, like, the guys, like the Imperial Legion dressing up like the British soldiers or something. Anyway, though, I always thought that was kind of funny. Coming in at number 2. Now, this is where we get really interesting. Because I don't really know how to put this. I kind of had to split it because they're both the same person technically. I guess not anymore, but technically. Jyggalag and Sheogorath. I always kind of love this whole chaos versus order that we see in a lot of series. And the Elder Scrolls does their best job at kind of interpreting this by, with the two characters, the two Daedric princes, I should say, Jyggalag and Sheogorath. Now, funny thing, I don't really see a lot of people talking about Jyggalag and what he may be up to in the time of Skyrim, so I am actually planning a video for that. Because I truly do believe that Jyggalag may just be the prime antagonist of an Elder Scrolls 6. I mean, it's a possibility, because you gotta think about it this way. He was the most powerful Daedric prince, and this is what I really like about him. Because we finally, the answer, a lot of people always talk about who's the most powerful. Well, it was basically stated that Jyggalag is the most powerful. His way of being, what I like about Jyggalag so much is how he truly only believes logic and order. And I think that's an interesting personality because we see a lot of those kind of people as mean or they're not perfect and they need to, open up their eyes more. But he kind of proves, just like the Dwemer, that just because you have a different philosophy and you don't really kind of base a lot of your philosophy on God or whatever, a lot of your philosophy is just on the facts and the true nature of all things. I actually like that about Jyggalag. He proved that it can make someone more powerful. And the funny thing about Jyggalag being the Daedric Prince of Order is that he kind of seeks this some sort of unnatural order, if you think about it, though. Whereas I said Peryite is the Taskmaster, and, he also keeps the natural order. Jyggalag doesn't do that, despite being called the Daedric Prince of Order. He doesn't do that at all, actually. He actually dominates over everything by taking it over. That's not order, that's unnatural order. Meaning that yes, in his eyes, he's creating order, but he isn't actually, doing order. It's actually unnatural, so I always find that funny. But I like how his Daedric soldiers, the Knights of Order, I like those guys. They're so cool looking, and they may not even be Daedra at all. In fact, we don't know if they are, but, I mean, let's be honest, they probably are, but it's actually possible that they may not be. So either way, it's pretty funny that Jyggalag just seeks unmapped order. But I like how, the other princes, they band together. And I guess I should say I really love Jyggalag for its backstory. and how I just like how they band together and put a curse on him to change him into Sheogorath, the bumbling fool of madness, as Jyggalag would call him. And I like how we get to battle against Jyggalag, since that's technically the first time that we truly get to battle against a Daedric prince. Like, truly, besides ESO and Molag Bal. Otherwise, we never really actually get to fight them. We just kind of, like, get to stand against, like... You know, you don't get to fight Mehrunes Dagon in Oblivion. You just literally, as I said in the earlier video, you get to walk right past him, and then Martin does his whole thing. So, anyway, though, I love Sheogorath for the same reasons of Jyggalag as a backstory, but I also like just Sheogorath and it's just funny quotes, like, were you saying something? And then, like, just the Wabbajack, obviously, is one of the most fun Daedric artifacts. Also, Sheogorath, just the cheese to die for. I don't know, he's just funny. Like, everybody likes Sheogorath for just his witty, stupid remarks. I guess it's not supposed to make sense, obviously. But I also like how the player character in Oblivion becomes the new Sheogorath in the time of Skyrim. And I like how they even reference this by saying he was there for that whole thing with Martin Septim turning into a dragon god and blah blah. So, it's one of those things that I really like. And I also just like how it's kind of a mystery at what is Jyggalag doing in the time of Skyrim. Now that the Grey March has ended and Jyggalag, thanks to the hero of Kvatch, got to, you know, reverse the curse and not become Sheogorath anymore, he was then wandering Oblivion. Yes, he lost probably a lot of his power, so he's probably no longer just a straight-up strongest Daedric prince. But what if Jyggalag is recovering, and it is only a matter of time before he strikes? But this time, not only against the other Daedric princes, but against Nirn. Who knows? We don't really know. It's kind of funny, and I really want to make a video on that, because, as I said earlier, I think there's an extreme potential of Jyggalag being the next main antagonist. If we have to have another Daedra, I think it would be him, since it would actually make the most sense. But anyway, coming in at number 1, and I don't even know why a lot of people never talk about this character enough, in my opinion. Maybe just because he's not in Skyrim and he's from Oblivion. But we have Martin Septim. Yeah, Martin Septim to me is one of those characters in the Elder Scrolls universe that I think is written kind of just so well that I don't know if we'll get another one like him. Because in Skyrim, you see, the plot is driven by you. You are the hero. Whereas in Oblivion, the true hero is not the hero of Kvatch. Yes, the hero of Kvatch basically kind of saved the world, but it was Martin Septim's sacrifice at the end of the day and how he became, one with Akatosh and effectively defeated Mehrunes Dagon. And I like how we even have a backstory for him, kind of like, we don't really get a backstory for Delphine. Well, we kind of do, but you know what I mean? Like, but not an in-depth one. Because again, at the end of the day, she's not the hero, you are. We don't even really get a backstory that much for any of the Greybeards. And the only, I guess, main quest character we actually get a backstory on is Alduin. How funny that the villain, right? And I just like how Martin Septim used to be a Daedra worshipper, and at the end, though, he's one with one of the chief deities of the Vines. That, in my opinion, shows character development. And two, I like how, Martin Septim, the cliche way to write him would have been like, once he finds out that he's the Emperor's son, is that he'll announce that he's the Emperor and blah, blah. No, he doesn't even know if he can. That's realistic. Imagine if you grew up as a farmer and maybe a farmer/priest your entire life, and then you're suddenly told that you are the son of an emperor and you are needed to save the world. What would you do? Would you really just all of a sudden know how to act like an emperor? All of a sudden know how to make political decisions? Know how to just do everything that an emperor needs to do? No, Martin didn't know anything. He was just a simple farmer and a priest of Akatosh. He was nothing more than that, and now he has to be emperor and act like an emperor and somehow install hope in a world where it looks like everything's going to crap. And it takes time. But when the Amulet of Kings is stolen, it was Martin's quick thinking, and thanks to him actually knowing about Daedric knowledge, that it's even possible to get it back in the first place. And I also just like how Martin Septim basically he basically did. He pulled the ultimate sacrifice to defeat Mehrunes Dagon and seal the gates of Oblivion forever. I think that was a great way of showing us that Martin Septim, he really did care. He really was doing all he did for the people of Tamriel, and that it definitely wasn't never to be emperor. He didn't care about that. He just cared about his people. And I truly believe that if Martin Septim had gotten to live and become emperor, he really probably would have made a great one. One that may have even surpassed Tiber Septim himself. But I really like the character of Martin because, I don't know, you just feel him, you see him grow throughout the story. And you see how he just... It's funny because most characters in the Elder Scrolls games, like main quest-wise, they don't really change throughout the story. Like, Delphine kind of sticks to the same Delphine. Esbern, as much as I like him, he's still the same Esbern at the end. And the Greybeards, they're still the same kind of dudes, like peaceful monks, who are kind of just like, well, Alduin's defeated, so whatever, he dies, haha, Alduin died, but it does not matter, because the world will end eventually. And Paarthurnax, he doesn't change either. Everybody kind of stays the same. And I think that's fine and all, but I really like how Martin changes over the quest. It feels like a real character. Anyway, though, Martin Septim is the #1 Elder Scrolls character in my eyes. Maybe you guys should definitely post in the comments who are your 5 favorite Elder Scrolls characters. And I will definitely see you guys tomorrow with a video on the top... with the video on the speculation of the story of Elder Scrolls 6. And, what do I think might be this conflict centered around that game? Anyway, I'll see you all later. Have a great Sunday.